So, hi everyone, welcome to another American TESOL Presents Free Friday webinars. We're here now every other Friday, beginning in February. So, February 2nd, 2018 is our first webinar where we'll have begin every other week. So, the next one after that will be on February 16th, 2018. So instead of every Friday, we're every other Friday, Free Friday webinars. And we are here because of AmericanTESOL.com, where you can get a certification in teaching business, advanced English. You can get a certification for teaching young learners English, for teaching TESOL advanced English, and also certification for teaching um, English language learners using technology. You can have face-to-face courses and also online courses. We also have countries around the world where we'll list where they're hiring and things like that, and that they want your TESOL certification. We work really well with students through a deadline. If you need a particular certification fast, then you're welcome to work to let us know, and we'll get that speed up to you as well. Today we are talking about motivating teens to learn English, and so we will provide you with different types of activities for that. This is based on my research and also my several years of experience teaching teens. So the first group that I worked with when I was teaching in 1994 were actually young learners. But then after that, and that was in an informal setting, unstructured type of education setting. But when I first started teaching English language learners, my first class was actually teaching teenagers. I started in 2000, worked for 4 years at three different schools in Texas, in San Antonio, Texas. That was run by Incarnate University. And so I worked with over 13 different countries, 75 learners, from beginners to um, advanced English. And all of them were integrated in the high school system of America. And so it's really, really important that not only that we understand that they're learning English, but their developmental stage, because these activities really do dictate, are based on their developmental stage. It is at this time, the fifth stage, according to Erickson, and that's something that you cover in, Erickson is a very famous theorist that you cover in pretty much all your education certification courses. So when you go to the university and you study to be a teacher, you'll cover Erickson. When you get your master's, like I got my master's in education and ESL, then you will cover Erickson. And so at the fifth stage is the identity versus role confusion, 12 to 18 years old. Sometimes in some special interest groups of TEFL, TESOL, all of that, they will put that under young learners. Some will put it under adolescents, and some will actually make the distinction of teens. But it is at this time that your teenagers are going between childhood and adulthood, and that they're developing their own type of moral code. They're really deciding what their identity is. They're starting to decide, what makes them different. They're starting to learn and really be able to become their own person, because the next part is they graduate and they're an adult. They're into society. They're expected to work, go to school, contribute. They get a lot of freedom. They do not have teachers that are constantly supporting them. They don't have, a lot of the structures and routines that they're required to once they make that, once they hit adulthood. So they're interested in, deciding what's important to them. What do they value in life? What is something they're passionate about? What are their beliefs? What are their goals? What do they want to, whether it be music, whether it be an engineer, and they're deciding lots of goals for themselves, whether they want to be married, whether they want to have kids. So there's a lot that's going on that they have to decide. And in the midst of all that is also fitting in. They have peer pressure. They presently have peers the internet makes that particular, all of these different types of steps even more complicated than when we went through this stage. So we might be able to reflect back when we were teenagers, but a lot of times, and especially with language learning, it's important that we tie it into technology. We integrate technology. We do have, because that is part of language learning with our students now, because they're constantly using a device. At this particular time, if you teach teenagers, I would say that 90% of your teenagers will have some kind of social network account. They will either have a Snapchat, a WhatsApp, a Facebook, a Twitter, what's hot or not. I mean, any of these, whatever's popular in your particular country, will be part of their, that their Skype account. They'll have some kind of social networking account. They will be communicating regularly on a device with either peers and family. So it's important that we take that and that we help them to really be able to tie that into their goals. So especially language learning, because that constant communication can be in English and it can be ways to help them learn as well. So we can create vision boards or dream boards, which you've seen in the past my students create. And you can go to shellyterrell.com/vision boards, or you can go to teacherbootcamp.com, do a search for vision boards, and you're going to find tons of posts where I've shared, what my vision boards look like. This is the current one that my students are working on at the moment. We've tied it into the one word project. It's turning out very well. It's being very motivating. They have to put synonyms, so they have that language learning, and then they put videos of, or images of what represents their word. They also have to put in their personal goals. This is from one of my students, where my student put the personal goals, and then they put inspirational quotes and videos to support that goal. And we did this with the Bunty app, where you can take the template. I've shared it under, and that way your students can easily turn it in. This has also been an activity that your students can complete on Padlet. So if you're a big fan of Padlet, I am, you can make this look much nicer than this. I wanted to show an actual example from a teenager. So this is, this is how they did it. You can make it look much nicer. You can make it look like a Bunty one as well. But your students would basically put the same thing. You can create a template. And the great thing about Padlet is they don't have to have a Padlet account. You can actually create different Padlets. I do that for my students. And then what I do is I give them the URL and a passcode to enter that. There are tons of selfie activities, and this really goes to that Erickson stage of development of identity. Selfies are a big form of self-esteem, also tied to their self-actualization, is tied to their the way they perceive themselves, whether they have confidence, whether they believe in themselves or not. And unfortunately, a lot of selfies are tied to what their peers, if their peers like those selfies. So I've created in my book a Go on a Selfie Adventure. You can get the free template here, but this is what it looks like. And it does have some language involved in it, because what students do is they edit this template. They put a selfie with their favorite food, a selfie, and so you get to know them, their favorite talents or hobbies, with a new friend they met, where they face a phobia, a USSI, which is a group one, of a book they've read, an accomplishment. I mean, you get to decide the way they do it. Then students present this in front of their peers in class, and then they're able to have that conversation component. And then what this does is it really helps them to make those identities, to share their traits, to be able to express, what they're good at, which gives them self-confidence and really helps to the narrative of who they are. Another idea is to actually have students create selfie comics. Now, my favorite app for doing that is Comics Head. You can get that on iOS or Android. If you do it on the iPad, you can actually add audio to the comic. Now, there are other great comic creators out there. Pixton, there's Make Believe, but the reason why I've added Comics Head is because Comics Head allows you to add a picture. You can add your selfie and you can create yourself as a comic. Friendstrip is another really great one. It's for iOS and Android, also free, just like Comics Head. It is not available on the web, neither is Comics Head. And you can upload your own pictures. You can draw on the comic with Comics Head. You can draw on the comic, or you can choose from their library of things. You can create, so students, teenagers, I've had in the past teachers tell me that as soon as they started doing one of my video activities, that totally changed their English language learning class. That their students who were not motivated to learn English in the summer, especially when parents forced them to take an English class, suddenly when they were allowed to create a video, would be very interested in learning English. If this is the case, then here's an idea for them to create a selfie comic video, or to make any kind of video where they can transform it into a comic. This is called lomix.co. It's iOS and Android, and it'll take whatever video you shoot and make it look like a comic. It'll give you the frames, and you can add the narrative and things like that. So that could be really, really fun for students to be able to create this little comic type of video. They could even do like a music video or something. It kind of reminds me, if you've ever seen the video, I think it's by Aha, Take on Me. So it looks a lot like that Take on Me music video. You can even show them that even though that's a real old 80s video, it's gotten very popular because they replayed it on an episode of Family Guy. So that becomes kind of a really funny video. You can have selfie avatar videos with the Gapsy iOS Android app. So what that does is it uses augmented reality. You actually take a selfie and you make yourself into a little cartoon. So you change your selfie, make yourself into any kind of avatar and then what you do is you can create a video anywhere you're at. Let's say that you're at the Louvre or at the Eiffel Tower, which right now you probably wouldn't be. Sorry if you're in France, because I know there's a lot of flooding, so please be careful. But if you're in Paris, let's say you put this video on Paris, then it'll show your avatar there. It uses augmented reality, and you create a video of you having an adventure there. You can do it at the mall. You can do it at anywhere. This is a good idea because a lot of teachers tell me or write to me and say, I like your selfie ideas, but my students are shy. They don't want to show themselves. Or I'd like to do this with young learners, 12 years old, 11 years old. How do I get parent permission? How do I make sure that it's not their faces? Well, with Gapsy, they create the avatar, so it's not their face. It's a cartoon version of them. It is an augmented reality, so you're protecting their identity since it's not the actual them in there, but it's still their, an avatar that looks like them since they create it. They can change different outfits and stuff like that, so they might like that too. Sometimes teenagers get very shy. They don't want a picture of themselves, and they're so much more comfortable with an avatar as well, something that they created, a cartoon character that looks like them. So that Gapsy is a really great app. I would encourage you to try. First, I would have download it yourself, take a look at the app, see if it's something that you enjoy, and if there's any kinks or anything. Sometimes the apps that we recommend, teachers have come back to me and tell me that it might not work depending on their depending on what country you're in. So keep that in mind. Students, it's a good time because they're defining themselves and they're with peer pressure and they're really interested and their identity is tied to their peers, to have and facilitate online discussions and peer discussions. So recently, I'm a regular blogger for ESL Library, and so I recently shared a post on um, how to have meaningful dynamic discussions and the apps that go with that, and some ideas on how to spark that. So I'll go ahead and share that particular article. There you go. And so one of the ones that I really love, and I think English language learners will really enjoy, especially teens, is Flipgrid. With Flipgrid, you record a very short video. Your students, you can do it for free. You add the code, and the great thing is students can add emojis. They can draw on it their face. They take a selfie to represent. So there's a lot of great ways to use Flipgrid. It is an app, and it's also available on the web. Students, you decide how long the video is, and the really great thing about it is that you can download those videos. So if you're trying to do a project where, let's say, you're collecting a lot of videos and you have students working on a video, then that could be another way that you actually collect videos as well. You can actually put video discussions, is what it's mainly made for, but you can make several different types of videos. You decide the limit, a minute, 12 minutes, you decide what the limit is. Now, when you are doing the setting it up, you can add the discussion question. You can add links to more information, an article or anything like that, where they can find more information about the discussion. And students just click and they respond. They can respond to peers and they just answer that part of the discussion. Another way to do it is Voicethread. Voicethread for a long time has been an app that I've recommended. It's an iPad app and it's at voicethread.com, both free. It's a little bit harder and more complicated to set up a Voicethread, but you can get everyone involved and they have different options for discussion. So they can discuss. So here you can see some of them use their face, some of them use an actual avatar picture of like an animal or a pet or something. And then they have the ability to use an audio comment, a video comment, draw, scribble, or text. Audio projects. So teenagers really enjoy and love audio. They love being able to record, and audio projects are pretty safe, and they're really good as well for when you have they're just really good in general. Audio projects are a great way to, you don't have to show a face, you don't have to you're not sharing the identity of the student. Whoever wants to talk can be the ones who talk, and the others can be part of writing the script, part of the editing, part of finding ways to make the sound come together, like a sound engineer. And so there's a lot of I think audio projects tend to be pair projects or small group work. So that is one thing to note. When you do that, then yeah, exactly. There's lots of duties, roles, and jobs and tasks for students to work on together. And that's fun for them. They can do interviews, they can conduct interviews, they can create a news show, a radio show, a podcast. And these are the apps and tools I recommend. Of course, a lot of us are familiar with GarageBand and Audacity, which are some of the most famous ways to edit, record video, and edit it. You can add, different sound effects, things like that. Vukaroo is one of those ways to be able to get, if you don't have one of these softwares and you just want students to record on the web, well, then go to vukaroo.com. They don't have to register, sign up for anything. They just click record and it records them, and then they email it to you, or they send you the link, or even a QR code. iPadio is the free best way to create a podcast with an app. And the reason I say that is because now Audio Boom charges. So you also have SoundCloud. SoundCloud will limit the amount of recordings, and they have a lot of questionable material on SoundCloud. So it's good for a podcast, but not as good as iPadio. Don't let that trick you. I don't know why they call it iPadio, because it's also available on the web, I believe. At least it used to be. CC Mixer is an app and also a web tool, and a great way to find free music to upload to podcasts. And it's important we get our students to use music that, is free to use, because if they use, a lot of times when students turn in the projects, I can't share them because, they use Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, and that will, on YouTube, they won't be able to publish that. It'll take it off. Or on a lot of different networks now, they don't let you publish it with that. So it's really important that you're able to encourage students to find free music and attribute, to make sure it says this music is called this by so and so, and have the link to that person. To learn how to conduct interviews and also to learn about podcasts, StoryCorps has some of the best information out there. I use this with my students regularly. We will use it again in all my classes this year. There are lesson plans for teachers. So if you're thinking and you're saying, wow, I'd like to do one of these projects, but how am I supposed to do it? How do I set it up? How do I grade it? Then try one of the lesson plans from StoryCorps. It's free under Discover Education. They also give students a list of great questions. They give them tips on how to interview and questions. A quick activity that we will be doing next week with both my classes is students choose a category, 4 questions from the category. They share that with me, and then they interview their peer asking those 4 questions. And so that's a real quick way for them to conduct an interview. We do it that way because we don't have a lot of time. So instead of me getting them, technically, they also do an activity. That's an intro activity. And then what they do is they next create their own interview questions and let me know a guest expert that they will be interviewing about their career or ambition. So they have to do that. They have to contact someone and all of that. In my books, I also share that. I share templates and steps in my hacking digital learning strategies. That's one of the missions. And I share even an email on how to ask someone for permission or to request for them to get an interview. Video projects, as I named earlier, some of the most popular ways to motivate teenagers. In fact, most teachers, high school teachers, report to me that they can never get their students off of YouTube. So teaching with videos, flipping the class, and we do have a previous webinar on flipping the class. Teaching with video is one great way to motivate students. I've often showed them videos of even like motivational. We did the David Foster Wallace video. We've done a motivational speech by Steve Jobs. I mean, so, and the students really do like that. They like things like TED Talks. They get inspired by it. They love having a discussion about it. Students on their own can create, their own animations. We saw how they can do a comic video with Lumix. They can create a television commercial, which tends to be very short. Broadcast the news. They can become broadcasters. They can shoot their own documentaries. They can create a book trailer, claymation. So there's tons of different types of video projects. And we have a whole entire webinar and also resources at shirleyterrell.com/video. And these are web tools that I recommend. Now, there's also my simple slideshow. So some of them I didn't put on here because, so with this, my students this year used a couple, and I found out that some of these limit their creativity. My simple slideshow, my students, I don't like them using that anymore because it limits their creativity. Whereas if they use something like iMovie, they use something like, Shadow Puppet or Plotting, they become more creative. So I think that that's really Biteable. They made some excellent videos with Biteable, even though it has, a little marker and stuff. So now I'm not necessarily doing, I'm not necessarily showcasing every single type of video out there, because it really depends on what type of video. Now, if you're doing an explainer video where you're doing like a commons craft video, like this is what a blog is, or this is, then My Simple Slideshow is really good for that type of video project. Game-based language learning. Students love video games. They love playing them. And you might not think everyone's into video games, but trust me, they are. So what we don't include as gaming often is gaming. So things like playing solitaire, things like playing Words with Friends, all of that is considered gaming. And so there are particular gaming apps out there, especially for English and websites. EnglishAttack.com is one of those websites. It's from a good friend of mine in France, which is Paul, and he has created this. It's been up for a long time, and he's really made a really great. English Attack is very motivational. It has music, movies, anything that teenagers love. It's basically made for teenage language learners. Another fun way for students to learn language is to be able to create their own learning games. And when they do this, they can do, my favorite are adventure games, because you add text to it. There are also text-based adventures, and that's where the whole entire game is based on text, and also what you text back. So that's really, really wonderful to be able to get students to do. GIFs are another real fun way that students like to learn. They use that in their language all the time. They can create their own GIFs, or there's actually an English language learner site associated with learning with GIFs. That's giflingua.com. It's by David Dubois, who's very famous. I believe that now he's in a different, he used to be in Canada, but now he's in a different country. I think some kind of island in the Caribbean or something now. So David Dubois has, he's the creator of EFL Classroom Community. I mean, he's amazing. So now he does the GIF Lingua side, and it has lots of GIFs and lessons associated with those GIFs to teach language learners. Language learners love music. That is another big way that they learn English. Music is highly motivating. I remember asking a lot of my adult learners how you're able to, how they learned English. And unsurprisingly, a lot of my English language learners learned strictly from American music. They were really motivated. They really like someone like Bryan Adams, and it's interesting that a lot of my German students love Bryan Adams, which did everything I do it for you. A lot of them, like different types of musicians, and then that's how they learned how to go ahead and do it. There are some other apps that I recommend for teenagers. Canva is great for images, infographics, things like that, which are really, really, students love images. That is why you notice that the most popular social networks for teenagers are how to be able to, oh, that's very interesting, how to teach kids how to write handwriting cursive with songs. That would have been a very interesting webinar. The kids love images, Snapchat, Instagram, all of those. You can create video. You can also use images. Also, now all of the apps, Facebook Live, Twitter, allow you to even post images, do things with images, because people love images so much. It really motivates them. EduGlockster, teenagers love that. In all my classes, the students have always really loved that. It's to make digital posters, a lot like Bunsy, where you can add YouTube videos and all kinds of things. Flovella is really interesting. That one's not necessarily made for education, but it has dynamic ways to edit and present, and to be able to create a dynamic presentation that's visually pleasing. So teenagers will enjoy that. Digital badges are another way to motivate your teenagers. It's part of the whole gamification system, and it's also a great way to just make the learning fun and to encourage them. I use Credly.com. I have tons, I think over 300 that I've created and given out of badges. It's a big part of, any of my sessions and classes as well. And teenagers love them as well. They love collecting really cool badges and fun badges. And so that's just a brief overview of all of the different types of activities you can do with students, teenagers. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, so we'll have a recording that's as short as possible. Thank you so much for coming.